Brittany, just in time. Okay, the recording is live. Juliet, I'm gonna make you host and then I'm gonna shut up.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Lane. So today's working group call is April 29th, 2020. We have a agenda that is up on GitHub. If if one of you can put that in the chat, that would be great. And hello and good morning, everyone. Let me know if you can hear me clearly, or if it's a little muffled or anything. Great to see everyone. So let's just get to the agenda. And as we do the usual stand up and find out what happened over the past week, I'll go first. So after last week's working group call, we had an evangelist call and I talked about the status of the governance working group and particularly emphasized the survey and where we were with the survey and encourage the evangelists to promote the survey to their respective communities. And also I wrote a post on the forum about the survey. And again, just urging people to respond to the survey and giving a deadline of May 1st so we can try to get to 100 results. So that is my stand-up from last week. Who'd like to go next?
I can go next.
Wonderful. Good morning.
Okay, so I posted the survey in a couple of places. Don't know if I got any reactions back, but I started a keynote presentation just to marshal all of these kind of floating ideas about governance, to kind of try and develop my own ideas, as well as to try and, you know, break down the sort of complex ideas that are very current out there. So I've done a blog post on D-Page, sort of outlining as a side note to sort of Lane's stuff and the stuff that's on the GitHub as a way for me to just percolate ongoing stuff, and then I'm folding that into like a keynote slides thing to see if I can come out with some sort of coherent stuff. And I've joined Nakamoto.com. I've started a new publication. It's quite interesting. I've joined them, hoping to maybe write on there and perhaps talk about Blockstack on there. Maybe about governance. It's kind of it's the kind of place that people would be actively thinking about this sort of thing. Yeah, busy with the testnet otherwise. Yeah, so that's it.
Wonderful. I definitely agree with the idea of having places to think out governance, to write posts or essays about it. And I took a look at your D-Page, and I thought you did a great job. I really liked all the stuff you included and wanted to go back in and read some more.
Thanks. That's the idea, to try and just get it on a smorgasbord and try and hammer it into a kind of place where we can really see what's what, you know?
Very good. Anyone else?
I want to second that.
Hello.
Folks, good morning, good afternoon. Yeah, no, I want to second what Julia just said. Thank you, Kieran. I also took some time to read through the notes that you compiled, found it really useful. And again, I just want to reemphasize, like it's so perfectly in line with the decentralization and permissionlessness ethos here, which is like jump in, start contributing. It's kind of a duocracy, and I think that you're like an awesome example of that. So thank you again for that contribution. Yeah, I don't have any Blockstack or Stacks specific updates for the past week, but on the same topic of writing, I just wanted to share that I set myself a challenge of trying to publish one personal / quasi-professional blog post a week. I won't say all year, but as long as I possibly can. And I've been writing a lot about more about governance stuff, and I'll share some of those things with this group. And I'd love to hear, yeah, critical feedback. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Lane. I'll be looking forward to reading those because I think we've all really enjoyed the work that you did previously on governance.
It was excellent.
Anyone next
I'm
for
going to
the
turn off my video
stand-up?
while I finish breakfast. I'll be back in a few minutes.
Anyone next for the stand-up?
Sure, I'll jump in for a quick one. Kind of the same thing. Things have been quiet on my end, but at the same time, we are still making progress on GitHub. That's probably the biggest area that I keep coming back to. And I've been trying to catch up the older canonical notes from like meeting 3, meeting 2, meeting 1. And it's a little bit of what I talked about last week, where I'm finding things in these older notes and older issues that we've created that's been really fun to look back through and everything like that. So hopefully by next week or so, we'll have things kind of cleaned up. And the other cool thing that's come out of that is I found some other issues that we've talked about and we kind of got in progress, but then we never finalized like a decision or an action on. So we'll bring some of those up in the call today. But other than that, no blockers on my end and things are good.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I completely agree on the taking a look at things and seeing new information. And I know you're talking about in reference to GitHub and keeping everything working and moving forward. But I always, when I look into all the work that's been done, I find things that either I didn't see before or I think of it in a different way now.
Totally. And what I'm seeing is we have done so much, like we had talked about earlier too. And I really like the idea of trying to get some of these either concrete accomplishments or just kind of cool facts or resources that have come out into a regular blog post type deal. So that's going to be one of the other things I really want to look at is what would be good little chunks to start publishing. So I'm looking forward to that too.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Fantastic.
I think so hi, it's Brittany. I'll do a quick update. I know we'll get into the foundation in a little bit, but yeah, I've been sharing internally with the Blockstack PVC team around what the governance working group has been working on. And they were all very excited about, all of the work that's been done and kind of the number of people here who are involved. So just been sharing as we go. So a blog post like that, I'm happy to work with you on that, Jason, because I think I've been doing the same thing, kind of looking back, like where did we start and what did we expect? And then where are we today? Unrelated, just kind of a stand-up of things that happened last week is that the testnet went live for Blockstack, which is not directly impacting the governance group, but I think we're moving towards getting more people into the Blockstack ecosystem and trying it out, and more developers are excited about it. So it just creates a new group of people maybe that may join because they're interested in governance as well. So I think that that's something to see. It's just like, how do we get more people excited and brought in? Like Kieran, I know that you've done a lot of work since you've kind of gotten involved in the group, and that was, maybe a week or two ago. So I think
yeah.
pulling more people in like that, maybe we'll have some more people join. So just looking out for newcomers in Discord and finding other people who maybe have different perspectives too. So that's my update.
Thank you, Brittany. Do we have anyone else who wants to?
Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Yeah, it's been, as Brittany said, a very active week. Even though the testnet was launched, and that also is brings everything meaningful. Why we had to work on the governance. Because that's something that we will have to understand and how to apply that, and which are the consequences that will bring all the Stacks blockchain. And one of the questions that was asked is if this the issuing of stacks it has a limit, and so then I didn't have that answer, but probably that's one of the things that governance has also to deal with that, and you know the minting of new coins, but probably it's already answered. But those are the things that sometimes you know had to do, and so there's been very active week in all senses. Of course, governance, and I'm just reading, and also Kira, thank you very much for your compilation. You know, it's always useful to. I think that is a good attitude. I would have it that we should have, because we come across with a lot of information, and then suddenly, you know, just you put something here, put something there, but you compile. Sometimes better is a resource is better and more practical than.
But
So,
I wonder
yeah.
if the new people would like to say hello and introduce themselves. All right. Well, we can go back to the agenda. Is there any other stand-ups for this this week? So the next item on the agenda is, hi, Matt. I see that you're not in a good position to call. Thank you for letting us know. Or a good position to talk. Thank you. So the next point on the agenda is the community survey. And apparently we have 52 total responses now. And it went out with the quarterly newsletter a few days ago. I posted a forum, and the question is next steps. Is there any ideas, thoughts, anybody want to discuss next steps for the community survey?
All right, so
let us probably in 1 week more we should process that. There's going to be another activity of promotion this tomorrow, I think, in 2 countries, and so then let's have a deadline maybe for next week and the end of next week.
Yeah, Philip,
that dovetails with what's coming up. So I see Lane, and both Lane and Jason had something to add to this topic.
I'm unmuted, so I'm gonna I'm gonna just jump in quickly. I just wanted to share that Jenny sent her apologies. She wouldn't be able to make the call today, but she did mention, as everyone here is aware, that the survey link was shared in the newsletter, and that she was expecting probably a few more responses than we got. It did tick up, which is good. And she also had mentioned that we may want to think about doing like a quote unquote survey sprint, and kind of focusing more efforts on various channels to try to get more responses. And I think she has some ideas about how we might do that. But I'm personally perfectly okay if we want to wait 1 more week, with the one caveat that we had this sort of soft deadline at the end of the month, which obviously is coming up in a couple of days. But yeah, just want to share those thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, I think May 1st is definitely a good soft deadline, because I think that day is important for many other reasons. But I put that in the post that I did, requesting that people respond to the survey, and I don't know if we want to do something different, or take a look at what we have at that point, or make some decisions. But I'll also reach out to Jenny as well, and hear what she has to say.
excellent. My part was just that I dropped a link in the chat to the original issue that we opened around this, and it keeps coming back to those same questions. What is there a threshold where we want to look at the data? What do we want to do with the data, and how do we want to look at it? So I think we can start game planning some of that, but I'm okay with the extra week's time as well.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jason, about the taking a look at what we want to do next, based on the link that you dropped in. So I think that I'm open, and everyone is welcome to jump in here and share their thoughts about what we should be doing next on the survey, or if we should, wait a little longer, wait till next week, and then parse it out then.
When will the goals of the survey have been met? As an open question.
I think that one soft goal that may have been bandied about and discussed amongst this group as well as the evangelist was to get to a minimum of 100.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's one goal, but the goals being met is really about the survey, as you know, and everyone in this group knows, is about learning more about the community and identifying the community's needs and their thoughts and who they are, their roles, and all of that in relevance to governance.
Mm.
So I'm not hearing any more ideas, unless Kieran, you have something more to share. I'm not hearing anything more, and we might move on to the next point on the agenda. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, see thumbs up from Kieran. Maybe some smiling faces.
I saw a bunch of thumbs up, so I think we're double thumbs.
Okay, all right, well, moving on then. Thank you, Brittany. When I'm looking at this on my tiny little screen on the phone, it's hard to see everything. Let's see. So
Wow.
our next,
Juliet, you're already a hero for hosting this meeting, and you're even more of a hero for doing it on a phone. That's that's really impressive.
yeah, I need to reset up my setup on my desktop. So that's the phone. That's the reason for the phone. It's just easy. So looking to the next point, there's the blog post outline. And Jason, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about this. You had a note about the project board and issue label and commenting on number 26, the issue 26. Would you like to say anything about the blog post outline that we discussed with Jenny last week and the week before, I believe?
Helps if I use the right keyboard. There we go. I'm in between machines too, so I completely understand that. And yeah, so for me, the basic call to action is the same as before. We're really just looking for some written content based on past accomplishments and things that we've done. The method that we've set up to do this is a GitHub project board that lives in the project management repository, and I can drop a link to that. And we have a basic system, this came up earlier, where whatever we want to do, whatever topic we want to talk about, or if you want to contribute anything outside of the issues that Jenny already created, definitely create an issue on GitHub. We get a little sidetracked in the sense that the word issue is kind of a weird one in GitHub, but we can use an issue for anything. It's basically a placeholder for a thought or an idea or something we want to track, like a document. So just a quick note on that. But the real call to action is what do we want to write? What do we want to share about what we've done?
And I would like to just add to what Jason said, is that everyone is welcome to add to this blog post. Everyone who has some thoughts about contributing to it is able to go on GitHub and add to issue 26. Because I think that's how it's set up, isn't it? Through the issue, is that where we're making our blog posts? or at least our notes on blog posts?
Actually, yeah. So what we've done is we have the board and we have a label for blog posts that I will use to track multiple issues. So if we have different topics or items or things to write about, it might be easier to break those into pieces. But anything is welcomed, honestly. You know, a comment to an issue or a new issue or anything like that. If it needs to be rearranged at all, I'm happy to help with that on the back end. I'm more curious to get the content.
Yeah, so anyone who's interested, and I know that I'll be making some, I have an ongoing post that has been sitting in my document, my Google Doc, of basically giving an overview to something I think that may be on the list, but no, I don't see it, it's there. But so just a blog post that overviews where we've been and where we're going and what we've done, and also addressing some of those questions that were raised back in March and seeing that all those questions have been answered. So that's some of the things that I'm going to add. I know that a number of people mentioned during the stand-up that they will be adding or interested in adding to the blog post. I think Brittany also mentioned that. So anyone else, anything else for the blog post? All right. Not hearing any responses, and I'm not looking to see any thumbs up or thumbs down. We'll move on to the next post that I believe Jason added from issue number 17, which is the community observer role for Blockstack PBC research calls. Jason, did you want to talk about this particular issue? I know it was raised by Dan, and I know that Katia wanted to see a formal statement on the GitHub about the role. Do you mind addressing this, Jason?
Sure. So again, as I'm going back through the older issues and things, I'm looking for items that we can close or finish out. And this one, when we looked a little closer at it, we had confirmation that we could have you as an observer, but I don't think we put any kind of official record, or we don't know if you've been able to join any calls. So with some of those open questions, I just wanted to bring it up again and see how we can either fit this into maybe one of the first SIP things that we do, or see how it fits in an official capacity for what we're trying to complete here. And for that part, I guess do you have anything you can share on this one, Brittany? Like if we're, earlier on when we first started discussing this, I know it was difficult because some of the talks were around like taxes and finances and things that were sensitive to PBC. But now that we're getting closer to the MVP status, do we still have room to have Juliet as a community observer? How would that look on your side of things?
Yeah, definitely. And I think from when we determined that till now, we actually I have not had very many research calls, because it has been more the talking with Deloitte around taxes. So now that that's in progress and some other members of my team are taking that over, I hope to have more conversations in the community, and I will make sure to include Juliet. But it was kind of like a lot of the research was done, and then we were like, oh, this would be great. But I haven't really had as many calls. But now that we're moving things over, there'll be a lot more time for that. And I would love to have Juliet as an observer.
Excellent. And I guess action items to kind of look at related to this issue, how do we make that official is the big question. And I don't know if Brittany or Lane, if you have any input. I know we were talking a little bit about a SIP process. Like what do we think it would take to make this official and on record?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can informally make it on record in either like GitHub or one of our in the forum, because I don't think that there's anywhere that like official sort of exists. So maybe the commitment is here to this community in this call and making that as such. But if you guys have other ideas on how to recognize that, or at least let others in the community know, so that if they have questions, they can reach out to Juliet or one of the other people on this group. I'm open to that.
Something that we started doing about a year ago in the Ethereum community and as part of the regular governance calls for Ethereum is exactly this, is identifying specific action items at the end of each of these calls and just highlighting them. So in the notes, at the very, very top of the notes, there's a list of action items from this call. And then each call kicks off with a review of action items from the previous call. So I don't know how like project management-y we want these calls to be, because I think it's generally a very good idea to record action items, but it can also feel a little bit stifling sometimes to have like long lists of things to go over at the start of each call. But I will go ahead and open a meta issue on GitHub and throw in an example. We can kind of get the ball rolling with the discussion there.
All right, excellent. So I think from my side of things, we will just keep this issue open for the time being. And then we should probably find some sort of process to where, Juliet, if you do join a research call, then maybe you make a note in the issue, or, we'll have some way to kind of record or share that process as well. But hey, we're learning. That's the early stages. I like it.
Well, thank you, Jason, for going over that particular issue. I think that that's all sounds like great ways to handle this. Thank you, Lane, for offering to open up another issue and perhaps some statement. I think that to what Brittany said, perhaps some statement on GitHub, if that's what was referred to in one of the previous comments, is all that needs to be done. But we can mull this over until next week, and then either close it out or do what other steps are determined by everyone in the working group by consensus. Any other thoughts?
I have just a question about did the translation into Spanish that we were talking about last week, did that get any further?
We can talk about that as we go forward, Kieran. We have if you're looking at the agenda, we have a couple of things before that.
Sorry.
So we'll get to that at the end on any other updates and topics, if you don't mind delaying that till later. All right. So the next thing after the community observer role issue is the code of conduct. And this is something we discussed last week with respect to the code of conduct that was posted as an issue and then closed and accepted by the Blockstack PVC engineers. And I think all of us discussed this last week, but one of the issues we wanted to raise was governance and due process in general, and how do we handle issues like these as they arise in the governance working group or in governance in general as we go forward. So how do we handle when some issues come up that impact the entire ecosystem, even though they're very acceptable, everyone would probably vote yes on it, but what should be the steps taken? And so I'd love to open this up and hear from everyone what their thoughts are with respect to due process, and then perhaps we can do some writing or some thoughts, either posting some notes on GitHub on the project board, or creating our own writing that we can share next week. Any thoughts on this particular issue?
I do, a couple. This is kind of exactly the area that I'm mulling in terms of mechanisms that might be invoked for kind of system-wide issues that aren't necessarily, but they could include technical issues, mining, issues, that kind of thing. But that would be a subset of the larger issues. So just looking at where those two kind of, as I see them, sides break down, the kind of technical and the human, the mining issues and the kind of human issues. Every explanation I see seems to have a duality to them, and I'm seeing a bit clearer how that might work. So I'm thinking in terms of how you might invoke a decision-making process that spanned a particular amount of time to deal with a particular topic that then was able to be resolved and then uninvoked, something like that.
Yeah, Karen, I think that I really think that's some good a good thought process, or to start working through that decision-making process, that invoking of what's the next step that we follow here in the working group and then in governance as a whole. Anyone else who wants to follow up on Kieran's ideas about due process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of ways to enact it. So maybe, I don't know if anyone has ideas on how we can kind of like share those ideas, because I think there's a lot of, like, I don't know if it's having a forum post and people weighing in kind of with feedback or different, or if it's a collaborative document to weigh in, because I think to Kieran's point, there's, you know, human issues, there's technical issues, and then there's actually just the process itself, like what should that look like? So I think that there's a lot of ways that conversation could go. So maybe like what forum in which we could discuss those things. I'm curious to hear what this group is, because I know this call, we usually don't have enough time to go very deep into those subjects, but maybe in written form it's easier, or a collaborative doc form. Well,
I don't want to interrupt if you haven't finished your thought, Brittany. But I guess. Okay, cool. Yeah, this is something. I mean, this topic is something that has come up so many times in the Ethereum world and in the Bitcoin world, and it's such a sort of core important topic. And it's interesting because it's also related to the previous bullet point we were discussing around like action items and making sure that that there's some sort of official or quasi-official, or at least sort of socially recognized process by which decisions are made and people can make their voice heard, and we record the decisions that are made, and there's accountability there. I mean, this really is governance in a nutshell. I could talk about this forever. I don't want to let myself do that. But what I wanted to share is that one way we could approach this is through the SIP process, right? We could sort of decide as a group, as a community, that we do have the process, and this process is called the SIP process. And maybe not everything has to go through that process, right? And so there's some line, like certainly protocol changes go through it, standards probably go through it. Maybe things that are not technical, but that involve the appointment of a community observer or something, like we decide that is a different track, but that still goes through the SIP process. So I'm just sort of proposing that might be the right context to have this conversation. And I did do my best to lay out a framework for some of these things in my SIP proposal, which was shared last week. I'm not sure if people have had a chance to see it yet, but it has what I referred to as kind of tags or considerations, I think I called them. So some issues are technical, some are economic, some are more like philosophical. So yeah, just throwing that out there as a framework.
And so I think since that slides us into that agenda topic, that's where we should go right now. I honestly
want to add just one comment.
Yes, please.
Well, essentially, our conception of life is based mainly, or have been censored just to consider the material or social aspects of life, and most of the actions in the world and government, the governance is just on that field of thought, and then it has been left out all the aspect of the spiritual, that by the ethics and things that have brought from the revelations of God has come in the history of mankind, And as Harold has said also that in the indigenous groups of also they have their own spiritual beliefs, and also that brings a spiritual ethics and how they organize. So one of the things that probably it would be wonderful if we just have this consultation of those two aspects of life. And I don't know how to put it, because there's a lot of censorship, and because they say, but they only, the communists, they say no, only social or economics, and then the true capitalists, no, the heart is not involved with business, so we have to get rid of that. So then that aspect is very powerful, and then the way that the conduct, I say the rules of conduct and the way to be, and this is a world thing, and it's very complicated, because each one will have a different ways of doing it. So if we have a kind of a universal way of at least, treating each other, that will be just some principles that will help us to maintain unity in the commons.
I just have to say here, Philip, because I think that bringing in both the ethics and there are moral considerations, ethic considerations, and considerations of the heart that go along in governance, that it's not just mechanistic. When we have people and human beings that are working together. So thank you for raising that and to bringing that into the issues of whether it's code of conduct or decision-making process in general.
This is one of the biggest challenges that I've personally seen in blockchain governance, right, is that the vast majority of people who up to now have been the core stakeholders in like building and launching blockchain platforms and communities are engineers, and engineers like to codify things and boil them down to the non-human, mechanistic designs, which doesn't work very well in governance. So I want to agree with this.
Very much so.
And also, Philip, thank you for raising Harold's research. Harold is not here today, but he's done a lot of work on the two wampum tribal approach to governance and decision making and due process. And I think that something that we leave out is that there are many different voices in governance and in Blockstack that have a different way of viewing how we can approach decision making. So I think it's really important to stop and take a moment and think about, are we really addressing all those voices, at least within the confines of this group, this working group. But it's really important.
It reminds me of something that Nathan, what's his name? Nathan from the Cardano video from last year that's in materials. In there, one of the quotes I pulled out of that he says, to make a blockchain takes a village. I'm not sure that's totally correct, but to make a blockchain certainly takes a kind of a reflection of everybody, that this blockchain's intended for everybody. So yeah, to try and reflect everybody within this group is obviously hard, but it's possible.
Yes, it's definitely possible. So bringing us back down to that I think brings us to a very a way to connect with each other that is less formal and more human to human. And so unless there's any other discussions to be had about this, I would like to go into the SIPS process proposal. I know that Lane, you've addressed it initially. is there anything you'd like to add today? I'm sure we'll be talking about this more as we go on, but is there anything you'd like to add about it today?
I guess just, yeah, at the highest level, and I know this has been brought up on previous calls, you know, we are looking for something sort of concrete for the foundation, whatever it will be called, to sort of, you know, take ownership of in the very beginning. And I think that the SIP's process, SIPs, I need to get used to calling it the SIPs process, it's a good starting point because it's relatively clearly defined. It's very important. It sort of seems to me like a very natural thing for the foundation to take stewardship of, because that is sort of its role in the ecosystem, as it's my understanding, and there's sort of no other obvious home for it. And so, you know, it's what I've laid out here, which of course is completely open for comment, and I really highly encourage everyone to jump in and poke holes in it and ask questions and propose things. It's not rocket science, right? It's kind of, you know, we're in a very interesting point in the life cycle of kind of blockchains and their communities, because, you know, Bitcoin has been around for more than a decade, and we kind of have seen what works and what doesn't work through the BIP process in Bitcoin and the EIP process in Ethereum, and now, you know, ZIPs and Zcash and some others. So, you know, my philosophy is sort of don't reinvent the wheel, you know, borrow from the good stuff that exists out there to the extent that it does exist. And then obviously there should be some changes for our ecosystem. And so I guess the biggest question I would leave everyone with as they look at this is sort of what makes our community special, and therefore what, you know, tweaks would we want to make, and that's sort of the framework from which I've approached this. I could talk about it more, but probably the best thing would be for people to take a look and dive in if they haven't already.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lane. Yeah, I agree. I think the SIP process, SIP process, you know, to date has mainly been owned by Blockstack PBC. So it isn't very decentralized. And so I think it's a place where there has been a traditional process that these proposals are submitted, you know, anyone can comment, and then they're either accepted or rejected, and then implemented if they're accepted. So I think that process has been there, but I think what we can do to improve it is just having the community actually be more involved, and then an independent organization like the foundation to actually help facilitate that is like a key component. So it's no longer just PBC who's having that say. So yeah, I see that as like a very clear place where governance needs to happen, and the process doesn't have to be complicated, but I think actually seeing that first SIP either get rejected or accepted by a larger group than just PBC is like a huge win for decentralization. So like if we can focus towards that, that may be the first trial of this, you know, governance group. And yeah, Lane did a great job with the proposal. So if you haven't read it, please do. I think it's open for comment. People can comment in Google Sheets there. Even if you just have questions, that would be great.
Yeah, it should be open for comment. I just dropped the link here. If you have any issue accessing it or commenting on it, let me know. And I think like everything else, we should probably at some point migrate it to GitHub, just because we're thinking of GitHub as our kind of canonical knowledge base. But I do find commenting to be easier on Google Sheets. Sorry, Google Docs. Just one thought I wanted to add to respond to what Brittany just said. As someone mentioned earlier on this call, you know, the Stacks 2.0 testnet is live, which is really exciting. And like governance, in governance, you need to govern something. And so the fact that there is a testnet and we're moving towards having like an actual, you know, blockchain, which is governed in a decentralized way, I think is really exciting. It's great. I'm going to borrow Jason's favorite word here. There's definitely some synergy here between these two events.
Yeah, and with the plan for Stacks 2.0, which has been published, is the goal is to have that launch, you know, Stacks 2.0 be ready for or to be finished and be turned on later this summer. So whether that's like June or July, but the goal of that is actually to have the community accept that. So like miners would actually accept the new updates. It wouldn't be something that PBC is just pushing out and people
have to adopt, but actually there has to be multiple parties who accept it. So I think that that's a key component that we talk about SACS 2.0 launch, but it is impossible to happen without the support of multiple stakeholders in the community. So this governance group working towards that deadline as well, I think is what's really cool. Because that will itself be a SIP. So SIP 7 is the actual proposal to launch SACS 2.0. And so if it were rejected, then it wouldn't launch. So pretty big gate there.
Just kidding.
Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo, oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to echo my part on that too. When we look back at that original blog post, A Path to Decentralization, you know, it's really fun. We are right in the middle of it. And with testnet, like you're saying, with governance, we're developing our processes. Like this is where it's all happening right now. So it's really fun.
Yeah, neon.
It's too exciting.
That's great. Great. Well, I know we have like 12 minutes left. Phillip, I see that you have to leave. We'll catch you next time. If you want, I can do a quick update on just the foundation. I think that's what's next on the agenda. Or did I skip something here?
That sounds great.
Yeah, that's
so,
I
the
didn't
good
want to
news.
interrupt the flow of the conversation since it was really going well there, so I stepped out.
No worries.
Not literally, just in the moderator form. So
this is a decentralized process. It's all good.
Doing great, yeah. Yeah, so with the foundation, the good news is that the new entity exists. So we applied last week, yay! And that process of picking a name was something I shared with you guys, but the legal process in which to do that is like when you file with the state, if you file anything that is too similar to something that exists, they will often reject it. So we try different things like STACS Foundation, the Open Internet Foundation, digital rights. Like we talked to the law firm that was helping us, and they're like, nope, 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 nope. Even Blockstack Foundation, we asked them if we could apply with that because we thought it was distinct enough that it wouldn't overlap with anything besides Blockstack. But because Blockstack PBC is registered in Delaware, they actually said that's going to get rejected too, because the body that's incorporating these doesn't know that you guys are related. So what we ended up with was the STACS Open Internet Foundation is the full name of the organization. But the actual foundation will probably just call it the STACS Foundation. So we could do that legally as doing business as, or we can sort of informally refer to it as that. But the goal was to get it separate and its own EIN. And then the next step is to actually move some funding to initiate the organization over from PBC. So that's what the legal and accounting team are working on here at Blockstack. It will also be discussed at this week's board meeting at PBC, kind of the amount and all that. So we normally at Blockstack PBC do an update after our board meeting. We share with the community. I think that call is scheduled for Friday morning. So if you want to join in with that, you'll get like a whole overview of the board and you'll see a lot of the foundation work in there. I'm working on the board slide, so it will also reference this group and the stuff that we've been able to get input on over the past few weeks. So that's great that we can highlight that in a public way as well. But yeah, once there's money moved over into that new org to help kick it off, then I will be moving over my employment from Blockstack PBC to the foundation. So I will be independent of the corporation that's working on Blockstack to date and be able to really help kick off this in a new way. So very exciting from our side. yeah, I don't know if there's any questions on that, but just wanted to let you guys know where we are.
I think that's wonderful, super exciting. And so can we listen into the board meeting, or how does that work? You mentioned something, or is that just a town hall that will happen?
Yeah, so I think we normally always do like a town hall or a community call. I forgot, I think maybe it's called a community call after the board meeting to go over what was covered in the board meeting. And I think that is scheduled for Friday morning. So I can, let me just make sure I have the right link from our community team, and then I can share that. That call is also, yes, Karen, Stacks Open Internet Foundation. That's right. Yeah, that call is usually recorded as well. So if you can't make the call, then you can watch it afterwards as well. But what we do is we go over all of the highlights from the board meeting. Usually I think we provide all of the slides from the board meeting. We just take out anything that may be like super sensitive. Yeah, so if you want updates on that, but like I said, it will include, I mentioned the foundation. And then I think the only other plan is to announce actually the foundation next week in a blog post, sort of saying like this new foundation exists. So that will probably be on we'll probably write it on the Blockstack blog, but we will probably want to put it out in some of our other community channels as well. So I've helped set up our Twitter handle, some of the properties. We're going to have a website property. So a number of those, just like domains, I'm having someone from my team just help like get them off the ground. And so with that, we will be able to like have like a place and a home and like a separate sort of space for all of this. So I'm excited about that. But I will share with you guys once we have that blog post up. It'll probably be in draft form, and then we can, you know, if you have any thoughts before we publish it. And I don't have an exact date yet, but it will definitely be sometime next week.
Wonderful, super exciting, super awesome. Like we need fireworks or something.
Thanks, Brittany. That's really exciting.
Wow, I think on that note, that's a big high note to finish on. I see we're at 7:54. I know some of you have to leave at 8. Any questions for Brittany in the last few minutes of the governance call? Any questions?
Is anything that we're doing today, especially with respect to this working group, these calls, the GitHub stuff, et cetera, Brittany, do you foresee any of it changing or needing to change now that there is a foundation?
It's a good question. I don't think it needs to change anything that we have today. I think if anything, figuring out like where the home exists for this type of working group, like thinking about, you know, I'd love feedback from this group on this. Like if members of our community are writing a blog post about something that's about governance or just things that they're learning, where can that exist and be amplified? So, you know, would it be tweeting it out from the foundation Twitter handle, or would it be, you know, we have a list of different open, you know, decentralized blogs that exist, and we can then do guest posts in it to highlight. So I think it's more about amplifying this work in a new way, and less about sort of changing the structure of these groups. But I'm open to feedback on that. And it doesn't have to be real-time feedback. It can be, you know, anytime. Feel free to ping me.
There were actually two things that made me think of really quick, and one would be, you know, we're talking about this blog post that we might publish regularly. So maybe the first one could be kind of Blockstack introducing the foundation's blog, and then the foundation carries on a blog from there. And the other thing I thought of was related to the shared resources we discussed. I think some of the other low-hanging fruit we can get to right away is something like a Zoom account, or a better alternative if we could ever find one.
Yeah, I love that idea. Yeah, I think that could be another place where we can just have ownership, and then it feels like contained, and then just like payment of stuff too. I know sometimes it gets wonky of like, okay, well, who owns this domain and where does it live? And so I think managing that helps too.
There is, I saw a Telegram announced this week that they are kind of making a product to rival Zoom to kind of fit in with the times. So that, yeah, you just reminded me of that. So I'll dig into that, see how that's coming along, because that'd be cool.
Very cool. Great.
And then on that same note, I also noticed that there were some updates for Jitsi, which is another alternative that is focused on privacy. And there were some interesting things that came up. I know that Phillip had mentioned that he had tried to use it before and it sort of fell apart when you added more than a certain amount of people. But I think they've done some updates, and so I'll post an issue on Jitsi and whether, you know, what we want to use for, whether we want to continue to use Zoom or how we want to approach it. But that's up to everyone in the community.
Jitsi has the benefit of being decentralized. There's no single backend server, and I believe it's open source. And yeah, I've had some not great experiences with it in the past, but I've also seen it have more usage recently. And in fact, there is a virtual conference in the Ethereum community that's happening on it, and they've got something like 60 people on a single session. And as far as I know, it's been stable. So it seems like it's come a long way. So good to look into it. Thanks, Juliet.
Very cool. Oh, actually, you bring up another, well, this is a tangent. So if there's any more questions on that, I'm happy to pause. I think another thing of, you mentioned conferences. So I know that there's a number of digital conferences happening. I know like Consensus is turning digital since they won't be able to be in New York City. And I think we were able to secure a slot for the foundation to talk at that. But I do know that there are a number of conferences looking always for speakers around certain topics. So I see that as, you know, members of this group who are doing a lot of work in this space, if you're looking for opportunities to kind of showcase some of the stuff that you're learning. It doesn't have to be Blockstack specific, but if, you know, if you're looking for avenues like that, happy just to be helpful and like connecting the dots and saying, okay, this, you know, this is a great avenue to do that. Because I know our team has someone who's paying attention to a lot of the events, and I think it's a great way to just continue to highlight the work that's happening here and get feedback on the work that's happening here.
I think that's a great
Jason.
idea. Jason, I see that you're leaving, so bye.
Okay.
All right, bye everyone. Thank you. I gotta jump off.
See you next week. I've got to run in a sec as well. I just wanted to respond to what Brittany just said. I feel like a broken record because I feel like everything I say, I'm going to be tagged as the person who starts everything he says with, in Ethereum, we tried this and it, you know, this happened or that happened. It's kind of like a lot of things that happen in Ethereum. And so one of the things that has worked really well in the governance initiatives I've been a part of in Ethereum is exactly what Brittany's describing. You know, there's a big group of people, you know, well, not a big, but, you know, 10 or 12 or 15 people who kind of have calls like this regularly to talk about governance and meta governance. And that group has gotten slots to speak at a number of conferences about governance in general and about Ethereum governance. And it's been a great platform for getting ideas out there and recruiting more people to join and learning. And so I think it's a great idea, right? If anyone in this group wants to get on a stage, whether it's actual or virtual, and share their experience as being a part of this group, like I support that. And I'll also work hard to create those opportunities for people.
Thanks, Lane.
It's excellent. I think that many people have indicated that they're interested in either speaking or writing, and particularly in this area. I know we've seen that Harold has done a lot of work. I think that many of us in this group would be interested in this opportunity. So I thank both of you for keeping a lookout for all of us and the foundation eventually, because this really sounds great to have many people speaking about governance. And yeah, I'll just leave it there. So I think we're at 8:01, and I'm here, I'm willing to stay here to, if there are any other questions or discussions. I know other people have to hop off. So if there's anything else, we'll let everyone go who needs to go, but if there's anything else, please raise it and let us know what you would like to talk about or issues that you feel need to be further discussed or addressed in this working group call.
Great.
Thanks, Juliet.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've got to hop, but thank you guys.
Yeah, I'm going to chip too. Thanks, everyone.
All right, I think everybody's leaving now. Karen, did you have some things you wanted to discuss, or are you off as well?
I'm good.
All right, seeing that everyone, I see Karen, you're still here, but you've muted.
I'm just trying to log out.
I think there should be a button up on the upper right side that says leave meeting.
Yeah, I found it now. It's in big red letters.
All right, well, thank you.
Lie down now.